Hi guys, what I want to talk to you about today is when badly designed products make it very difficult to go from Firefly rendering to Superfly rendering. So this is what the second or third version of Poser now that has Superfly, and Superfly is physically based renderer, which means that the renders look much more realistic if they're set up properly. But there are some limitations. So this jacket is a dynamic jacket, a karate suit, in fact, which, if I just show you the scene here, it's a karate suit which dynamically adjusts to that character as I move it. So I'll just show you something. I'll just render that everything's messing around because of the weird monitor I'm on. So first of all, I'll just render this. So this is set up to render Firefly. Shading rate of 1, which means that it's a fairly low resolution. I have a maximum bucket size, which is the size of the squares that it draws on the screen. We'll make that 500. Oh no, it won't let me go to 500. Okay, I'll go to 100 then yeah, let me go to 100. Okay, and I've got indirect light turned off. So let me just render that. So that's not too slow. And what I want you to see is the detail in the jacket here and the detail on the lapels here, so the lapels and the collar. So this is actually more of a judo gi than a karate gi, although it's got a karate logo on. You can tell by the heavy cloth. But what this comprises of is two elements. It's got texture map and bump map for the body, and then it has a displacement map for the lapel. It actually has a displacement map for the body, but the setting is so low that it's contributing nothing to it. And you can tell when you look along the profile here of the arm, the kind of material is not displacing the appearance of that smooth line here. And if we go to the material up here, for some reason it's very slow and I'm going between monitors like this. If I go to the material room, there's two parts here. There's two parts of the texture. So here's the jacket. And if I go to here, first of all, we'll look at jacket, which is just the main body part. And you'll see there's a color texture here, which comprises of the woven material and this just to displace the logo. And it also has a displacement component here, which comprises the stripes. But this map actually doesn't contribute to the rendered image, so it's kind of pointless. But the important thing is here that this color texture, which is plugging into the to give it the color, the amount of color, the specular, which is a really strange because it's comprising almost nothing on the specular, it's very flat, but most importantly the bump, and so it gives the appearance of 3D texture when it renders. But here's the thing that's really interesting. If we now go to the displacement map, you'll see this displacement map is plugged into here and it has a slightly higher value. And in this case, this doesn't contribute to the finished image except to give a bit of color down this lapel. This displacement map is doing an awful lot of work. Now, I want you to hold on to that thought. So we just rendered with Firefly, and we got a reasonable effect here. There's some kind of lumpiness down here, but it's not too bad. You know, Firefly is pretty good at handling displacement. Now, if I change that to Superfly, and the numbers here are all out because it's on a different resolution monitor, but just take my word for it that it's 1,000 bucket size and it's set for my optics here. So now if I render that with Superfly, see what happens. So the bucket size is 10 times bigger, so it renders quicker. But look at the mess there on that jacket. all the polygon noise and everything going on here. It's kind of triangled. And if you recall, I've spoken many times about the fact that Superfly rendering doesn't yet have what's known as microfacet displacement. So the Firefly, what it does is it looks at the displacement map, and then just anywhere on the texture that on the jacket that needs displacing, it will displace by the amount according to the brightness of the map. So white will displace more, black will displace none, and greys will displace somewhere in between. But if you remember with Superfly, it doesn't work like that. It requires geometry underneath it. So basically, the more detail you want, the more geometry you have to have. So what you get is this very rough displacement here, and I'll show you the reason for that. So if I go down here and display this as a hidden line, you'll see this jacket is made of triangles. So basically, that makes it very, very hard to get decent displacement from. And I'll show you a contrast. So I'll just go back to here. Oh, not wireframe, sorry, it's texture shaded. So what I need to do to get more detail out of that jacket is I need to increase the number of polygons. But if I choose, so this dynamic jacket shows up in the scene as an object. So if I click here and choose that, then you'll recall I have to go up to here and change the skinning method to Unimesh, which I've already done earlier. And with Unimesh now, what I can do is increase the number of polygons by subdivision level, sorry, by increasing the subdivision here. So as soon as I try and go to 2, it says there's too many polygons. And then when I render that, I'll get a slightly different type of noise because it's subdividing triangles, and triangles really suck for subdivision. So you'll see that's a bit finer, but there's still a lot of noise up here in the corner of the collar, and I would probably have to reduce the level of displacement. Just compare that again to the original. See how smooth and properly shaded that looks compared to this. Okay, in fact, if I just do a side-by-side comparison here, and set the other scene to the first one, and you can see this is the original with Firefly, this is with Superfly. Now let me show you why this jacket is a massive problem. So I showed you the polygon. So what I'm doing is showing you hidden line here. So it's basically wireframe, and see how that subdivision has just created these horrible, weird, almost random looking patterns here. So ironically, it's almost like a Japanese geisha pattern that you see on geisha type clothes. So these triangles, look, if I take the subdivision down a level, you can see that it's dividing each of these triangles. Here's a triangle, and then it divides it into into 3 segments each that are quads. And then when I do this again, it divides that into another 4, and it gets very, very messy. Yeah. Now, what I want you to see here is a comparison. Basically, what's happened is this jacket was clearly designed in Marvelous Designer, and Marvelous Designer is a fantastic clothing designer. But the trouble is that the way it works is it generates clothes using tries instead of quads. And then it has a retopologize option, which this creator clearly didn't use. And what retopologize does is just before you export the item of clothing, retopologize converts the geometry from tries to quads. And then what you would do is take it into your 3D program, 3D Studio Max or Blender or whatever, and you would manually optimize the quad topology. So if we compare to this jacket is from a different designer. And if I just move in a little bit and go back to this wireframe again, you'll see here we've got nice clean edge loops, all quads. It's just nicely designed. So when you increase the subdivision of this jacket, it behaves properly, and then when you have to displace it, it behaves as it should do. So I think basically this jacket is going to be extremely difficult to get the displaced detail on the collar to look right because of just basically it's poor design. Some of my early products, I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't understand why quads are important, and this guy clearly didn't understand that either. Now there was something else I was going to tell you. Oh yeah, let me just do one more render here. So I'll go back to Firefly, and I just want to show you one more tiny detail. It's not super important, but I'll show you anyway. So just rendering this now. Oh, I bet I've left that at I've left that at a high. Oh no, it's worked. Okay. Okay. So the point I was going to make is that sometimes you can see down here the textures, the displacement is kind of a little tiny bit noisy, and it looks almost like moire noise or some other kind of interference. And that can sometimes happen when you get textures, especially actually if they're overlapping, but also just sometimes the resolution of the texture. So even though this is a microfacet displaced texture, sometimes just the resolution of the texture as a displacement modifier can conflict with the resolution of underlying materials, and you just get this kind of noise at particular resolutions or particular distances. Sometimes it can just be the monitor display resolution can cause trouble, and that's just one of those things when you start dealing with textures. Sometimes you get unexpected unexpected noise creep in. Sometimes you can get rid of it with smoothing, sometimes with sharpening. There are various different things you can do, but that's not a bug. It's just the nature of dealing with textures. So anyway, guys, hopefully that just gives you a thought. It's not really something that you can fix. I mean, if you when the geometry is all over the place like that, this is just horrendous. It's just a complete gamble what you're going to get. I mean, you want straight lines down here where the displacement is, but it's going across all of these weird flower-shaped segments. So there's not going to be a straight line border. Whereas with the other one, there were nice straight quads down here and horizontal lines, and it was predictable what you were going to get when you displaced. And whenever you're displacing, you want your underlying geometry to be as predictable and orderly as possible. The one exception would be supposing this was a 3D scan of water, which is a product I've actually created. You're not going to be using displacement on top of a 3D scan. The scan actually does all of the work on its own, and then you don't displace on top of that. And so it's common with scans to keep scans as tries rather than quads, because you're not looking to create morphs from them. You're not looking to modify the surface. All you're looking to do is color the surface, and that's the one exception. Anyway, guys, look, I hope you found this interesting, and I will speak to you again next time. Next time I'll probably be teaching you how to rig dynamic clothing, such as this gi here, which is it renders nicely, just as long as you don't want any displacement or stuff, or if you're working in Firefly, it's great. So I will speak to you again soon, guys, and hope you have a great day.